Hello, and welcome back to Ruben Uncut. Today, I've gone back to standing up to make my recordings. But that's not today's topic. Today's topic is populism, the dumbest of all political ideologies, because it is empty. An empty political ideology. And that's what I'm going to be talking about with you today. Also, the fact that Cenk Uygur sucks now. But let's get into it. So, first I'm going to start this with giving you a little bit of a disclaimer. When I was in college, I described my political beliefs as populist. I thought of myself as a populist. However, I would later come to understand populism for being an empty belief system. Because it is. Populism, let's go to the definition. A political approach that strives to appeal to ordinary people who feel their concerns are disregarded by established elite groups. Support for populist politicians or policies, the government came to power on a wave of populism. The quality of appealing or being aimed at ordinary people. Art museums do not gain bigger audiences through a new populism. Populism is a range of stances that emphasize the idea of the common people and often position this group in opposition to the perceived elite. It is frequently associated with anti-establishment and anti-political sentiments. Do you understand? So, that being said, the first question you should be asking yourself is, what do populists believe in? I will wait. Oh, you say that populists inherently believe that the elite are the problem with the world? You know what? There's something to be said about that. In fact, I'd even say there's some truth in there. So why am I calling it the dumbest political opinion? Because, and this is important, populism has no core tenets or beliefs. It is simply the idea that those in power are abusing their power and thereby hurting you, the little guy. Now I know what you're saying. That also seems reasonable, and to a certain extent, it is. However, here's the problem you may have realized. There seems to be left and right-wing populism. So what does that mean? Well, what it means, or why it happens, is because populism, similar to fascism, we'll get back to that in a minute, is that populism doesn't have core beliefs. You see, it's one thing to identify that a certain group of people, elitists, if you will, in my mind, the ultra-wealthy, because we use a capitalist, I'm not going to get caught up in that right now. I'm going to try and stay focused here. Populism teaches that there is some group of people that are holding back society, and the society cannot move forward until these people are relieved of power. Can you see it yet? Do you know where I'm going? Have you figured it out? Here's the thing. Arguably, the question becomes, what do we do after that? Once the elite have been robbed of their power, removed from their positions of statehood and governance, once the corporations have been brought down, what happens next? And the answer may surprise you. The answer is, populists have no fucking idea. Because populism doesn't require you to have beliefs. Doesn't require you to have values. Doesn't require you to think about long-term solutions. Populism only gives you one thing that you feel. Enemies. Now, I once again want to stress this to you. There are wealthy people whose abuses of the systems that we live in are a problem. In fact, one might argue that when the richest man in the world buys a media platform for the sole specific purpose of trying to promote a populist politician into a position of power that... Wait, I'm sorry, I'm getting sidetracked again. So populism, like I was saying, is sort of an appeal to the common man, to pit them against the establishment. Who are the establishment? Well, definitionally, the establishment is whoever has power now. Do you see it? Do you see where I'm going? Do you see what I'm trying to say? I'm hoping that you're smart enough to get there ahead of me. Okay? Okay, I'm giving that to you. You're going to get there ahead of me. Tell me that you're going to get there ahead of me. Okay, I'll keep going. The problem with using anti-establishment as your core political belief is that that literally means nothing. That means nothing. Like literally less than nothing. It's an absolutely ridiculous way to form your political opinions. What do I mean? Why is that a ridiculous way to form your political opinions? Actually, I'm glad you asked. Because, and this is simple, after another group takes power, they become the group in power. And thereby meaning that they become the group that is the establishment. But if your belief system is based on the fact that the establishment is always bad, do you become the bad guys when you become the establishment? Do you see what the problem is? See, here's the thing. Populism has some merit to it. There is some merit to the fact that the rich and powerful often abuse the systems that are. The question becomes, what do you do about it? Well, the only thing you can do is you can build the system up to fight that type of personal self-interest. In fact, the entire design that the founding fathers had for the United States government was to discourage self-interest in the political systems. I mean, it didn't work, but that's the thing you have to strive for. You see, here's ultimately the problem. When Cenk Uygur is going into these rooms with these Republicans, roll clip.
And what I mean by that is not a revolution against the Democratic Party or the left or the country, but a revolution against the establishment. So I knew you guys were for real in fighting against the establishment when I started going on right-wing shows and I would say something negative about Mitch McConnell. And when I did that in the past, what I would get back is, oh, no, Mitch McConnell's great. Pelosi's terrible, but Mitch McConnell's great.
Let's do that here. What do you guys think of Mitch McConnell?
For Kamala Harris to come full circle and say, oh, I've got 90 corporate CEOs backing me, and I've got all these executives on my side, and I've got Dick Cheney. You need a non-politician to lead the revolt. So, because all the politicians, and right now they're having a conversation on the Democratic side about 2028, and the only people they mention are politicians. And my answer to that is hell no, okay? Because the politicians are used to the corruption. They grew up in the corruption. They like the corruption. They got their power through the corruption. I can tell you definitively that the Democratic leadership and the Democratic establishment will never voluntarily go in a new direction. They will never voluntarily accept populism. They are built on donor money. They are of the donors, by the donors, for the donors. So what I need left-wing voters to understand is that they're never going to give you what you want incrementally. Martin Luther King talked about the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Oh, if we just go a little further with Joe Biden, he'll give us another crumble and another tiny increment. No, they're going to just pick a new and improved corporate robot like Pete Buttigieg or Gavin Newsom, and they're going to come out with a new script, and they're going to say, I am now a populist, and they will wear flannel shirts, and they'll go to barbecues, and they'll pretend to eat ribs, and then they'll sneak out and go to French Laundry, right? So don't believe the corporate robots. Remember how many times they lied to you. We need to do a populist revolt and pick a populist left-winger so we could have a real contest in this country. The establishment Democrats are never going to win. We need to go populist, and the way to do that is not by negotiating with them, it's by defeating them in a primary.
There is a belief with some people like Seth Moulton and others that some of the embrace of what we would call wokeism or whatever was a reason why Democrats had a less than desirable election outcome. Do you subscribe to that belief? How do you interpret that when some people say we need to kind of shed away some of the more new elements of the cultural implications of politics outside of economics, like the Seth Moulton belief that where he says the trans stuff hurt us?
Yeah, so look, guys, on that stuff, I've been having these debates internally with the left wing. And I explained yesterday, actually, on the Young Turks. Look, everybody's positions are in a different part of the left-right spectrum and on different policies. So I can name you policies where you say, well, that's pretty moderate, right? I can name you policies that you're not sure is left or right-wing, but that is definitely populist, right? But some of my policies might be called extreme left in America. So, for example, I'm massively in favor of gun control. You told them not to move. So if on trans issues or any other, or crime issues, etc., if you really believe in the most far left positions, as I do on gun control, for example, that's okay. But you've got to know what to emphasize and what not to emphasize. And so if you say, no, I'm going to die on every extreme hill, well, you will. Electorally, politically, you will die on that hill. And then you lose on all of your issues. Talk about trans issues in terms of sports. I know we have massive disagreements, okay? And on one of those issues, professional sports, I agree with you guys. On high school sports, I don't. We'll go get into a bloody battle on that, okay? But I want to ask you guys something. Do you believe that trans Americans should have the same constitutional rights as all Americans to employment, health care, and housing? Constitutional rights.
Do you want me to translate? Well, there is no constitutional right to housing.
Okay, so I hear you.
He is appealing to their sense of populism. However, it's an empty gesture. And this is important because they don't actually believe the same things. MAGA populists are part of a cult of personality. In fact, often that's what populism leads to. Populism frequently results in one of two types of figures: singer-songwriter folk heroes and the worst people to ever be in government. You have to understand this. All major revolutions contain populism because that's the only way to fight the power, is through an appeal of populism to the masses, because the lower classes will always outnumber those at the top. However, the secret trick to this is that the masses, due to the fact that those in power control the systems, are not super well educated. They don't have good media literacy. They don't know what it looks like when someone is scamming them. They all go based on vibes, and that's a thing that con artists are hoping for, because con artists get to be good con artists by learning how to manipulate people's vibes. That's what being a con artist is. When you know how to vibe check someone / defeat someone's vibe check. Because a good con artist will always be one step ahead of your vibe check. They know you're going to vibe check them, so they say what they know you want to hear. Because when people say what you want to hear, it passes your vibe check. It's actually like a secret code to unlock your brain. You see, when people are already saying what you want them to say, your brain gives you dopamine. Because your brain is reinforcing that thing. It's saying, hey, that person agreed. We must be right. Dopamine for you. And that allows con artists to slip past your defenses, to start off with something reasonable that you agree with, and then escalate it till you're putting people in camps. That's the power of being a con artist. That's why you can't vote on vibes, people. Because voting on vibes is a little bit like choosing your church based on which one has the most pragmatic sex cult leader. Side note, if your church has a sex cult leader, you're in a sex cult. Populism is often tied to fascism, which if on a certain ground level doesn't really seem to make sense. After all, fascism is literally the idea of a ruling elite, a singular man who stands at the top of the pyramid and commands all. That is what fascism ultimately is. Allow me to define fascism for you real quick. Fascism is any governmental system that relies on a unitary executive power that's a single leader who can never be questioned. It is when you have an unchecked unitary executive who runs your country. That's fascism. Now you know. Authoritarianism actually has a different meaning, but we're not talking about that right now. Let's get back to the connection between populism and fascism, because it's super fucking important. Adolf Hitler, the Shitler himself, ran on a populist platform in order to build up the Nazis. But he was a populist. That's true, because he used populist rhetoric. He convinced the people of Germany that an elite ruling class, mostly Jewish, were the reason that Germany had come to fall behind in the world. I mean, to be fair, Germany actually sucked at that time because they had lost the first fucking world war, and, you know, the rest, it being the First World War, everyone else was kind of like, when it came to rebuilding Germany, was kind of like, go fuck yourselves. And so, Germany was forced to rebuild it on its own, and, this resulted in Germany's rise, or I should say recovery, being stilted, slow, and agonizing. There, of course, also was the Great Depression going on, plus a bunch of other problems. But Hitler didn't really have solutions for these other problems. So the solution he came up with instead was to run as a populist for the Nazi Party, or National Socialist Party. Now we gotta clear up some things here, though. It's worth noting that Hitler was not a socialist, or at least not what you would define as a socialist today. Hitler, in fact, hated socialists, and would actually give speeches where he talked about the importance of taking back the word socialists from the communists, who Hitler hated. Because communisms and their core philosophies were a threat to his populist rhetoric that would lead to, you know, him being God King of Germany, which was the goal. But Adolf Hitler created his populist grift on the idea that Jews and communists and other groups of elites were, you know, manipulating Germany into poverty. Now, part of what made this possible was the fact that some people were good at the stock market and got out before the crash. A lot of these people were Jewish. Now, before you jump into, well, that proves everything. No, it doesn't. Jewish people being good at capitalism is not a sign of a conspiracy. Capitalism sucks. But that doesn't mean that people being good at capitalism is the sign of a global conspiracy to control all the goyim. That doesn't add up. That's not how you draw a straight line from one thing to the other. But Hitler used his populist rhetoric to claim that this elitist group of Jews were out to, get them. Now, the thing is that there were communists in Germany at the time. That's true. And the communists in Germany had a very clear viewpoint on Hitler. Unfortunately for them and the world, their viewpoint was possibly the only political thing, the only political concept dumber than populism. Accelerationism. Accelerationism is a range of revolutionary and reactionary ideas in left and right-wing ideologies that call for the drastic intensification of capitalist growth, technological change, infrastructure sabotage, and other processes of social change to destabilizing existing systems and create radical social transformation, otherwise referred to as acceleration. It has been regarded as an ideological spectrum divided into mutually contradictory left-wing and right-wing variants, both of which support the indefinite intensification of capitalism and its structure, as well as the conditions of technological singularity as a hypothetical point in time in which technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible. Now, you may be wondering, why would left-wing people want to accelerate capitalism? Well, actually, there's probably several reasons for that. One of which is that Marx describes capitalism as the stage that leads into socialism. You cannot have socialism without capitalism occurring. It's just a basic function of how that works. But the other reason is because at a certain point, the belief is that the acceleration of capitalism, or in this case, the acceleration of fascism, would result in a populace that would understand what they were witnessing, and then reject it. The idea being that the acceleration of capitalism would then lead to the understanding that capitalism was bad. Or, in the case of Nazi Germany, the belief that once Adolf Hitler were elected the head of Germany, only then would they be ready for the revolution to turn against the fascists once they had gotten a taste of what fascism really was. So the communists in Nazi Germany refused to unify with the liberal or social democrat parties. Those are not the literal names of those parties. I'm just telling you roughly where they are on the spectrum, in order to form an alliance to defeat Hitler's rise to power, believing that they would benefit more from the accelerationism of this gentleman than they would from the continued efforts of the status quo. A belief they probably held up all the way until Hitler killed them. Because this is important. The major problem with this form of accelerationism, the idea that escalating the conflict between you and the other side, or escalating the rise of this negative force as a way to get the populace into a fervor against it, is not proven anywhere in history, and is a really bad idea because it means you give all the power to the fascists, and fascists can't be controlled by democratic processes, so they fucking kill you. Because that's what happened to all the communists who refused to join forces to stop Hitler from achieving power in Germany. Hitler fucking killed them. In fact, Hitler basically sent his minions around to all the various organizations, whether they be political, religious, or even secular, like atheist clubs, and basically we had them be like, hey, is your church slash community organization slash atheist club going to swear allegiance to Hitler? Oh, you are? Excellent. We like you. You can stay. Oh, you're not going to swear allegiance to Hitler? Oh, I'm sorry. You get to die as a political dissident in a camp. Accelerationism did not benefit the communists in Nazi Germany. In fact, it didn't benefit anybody. The reality is that when you escalate a situation, you are more likely to create a problem for yourself in the future. Instead of, attempting logical reforms to your society, the desire to throw the whole of society out with the bathwater and start anew is exactly how fascists tend to gain power. You see, that's the thing. Cenk Uygur is wrong. Let me be clear. He says that what he is doing is that his goal is to bring the left and the right together in populism, which is a fine idea on one hand, except that one end of that spectrum believes that the populist problem comes from the elite oligarchs of capitalism, and the other side believe that there is a Jewish trans conspiracy to trans the kids. And that's fucking insane. One side believes that we should all have free healthcare, and the other side believes that the government has a space laser that they've been using to set fire to California. I actually don't know if they're saying that about the current fire, but California's had so many fires that, it's happened. I mean, not the space laser, but the accusation is space lasers. Marjorie Taylor Greene is fucking in power. At the end of the day, being anti-establishment is not a real belief system. Because, and here's the reality check, if you had a belief system, then it's possible for there to be an establishment that you agree with. Do you understand now the difference between populism and believing in things? Because populism sees a very obvious problem with society, which is the inequality. Populism points specifically to that inequality. However, populism has no real political convictions in and of itself. Populism can be used to justify any range of political beliefs, whether they be open borders or borders so closed that we throw immigrants to a crocodile moat. Populism could be used to justify a universal basic income, or populism can be used to justify killing Jews and taking their money to prop up your economy. To be clear, that was the thing Hitler did. Can be used to justify universal health care for all. But populism can also be used to justify taking rich people out into the street and shooting them in the back of the head. Populism can be used to justify almost anything depending on exactly how bad the enemy you have painted for your people is. Populism, at the end of the day, is empty. It is an empty concept. It is something that does not necessarily benefit you politically. If you identify as a populist, I have not begun to have a real political conversation with you, because if you identify as a populist, then that simply means that you have recognized the fact that there are people in society who abuse their power. That's not a full political belief. For starters, you have to justify how they're abusing their power and why it's bad for everyone. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that can't be done. I'm not trying to make you skeptical of questioning power. You should question power. Not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you don't have a core belief system that you're using to define your own sense of political values and moral values, then populism is literally empty nothingness that can be mapped onto any belief system there is. And in fact, every totalitarian leader who has ever been, every head of any movement that has ever been, has used some level of populism. So you can't look at populism as the justification itself. Populism is merely the acknowledgement that there are problems with the power structures of our society. However, populism is frequently something that is held up because it is immediately recognizable, but also completely empty. In college, like I said, I identified as a populist because I was always on Alex Jones' fucking website checking out the coolest conspiracies around. And yes, I do have questions about whether or not 9/11 was an inside job. However, I have grown a lot since then and now understand that evidence-based knowledge is more valuable than rampant speculation. I think the CIA killed Kennedy. What? Anyways, the point is, populism in and of itself is just not enough. It's not anything. So the question becomes, is Cenk stupid or is Cenk evil? Or is Cenk just a useful idiot? Wait, that goes under stupid. Oh, damn. What an ironic time to say something stupid. Getting back to it. Is Cenk Uygur stupid or is Cenk Uygur bad? I'm not going as far as to say evil. He's done some good in the world. And this is the tough question that everyone on the internet is fighting with right now. Is Cenk Uygur a grifter who's just looking to capture that audience? And the answer to your question is maybe. You see, because when you break it down, the question becomes, is Cenk an empty-headed idiot whose anti-establishment values really are the core of his belief system instead of having actual political values? Or is Cenk Uygur aware of the emptiness of populism? Is that why he calls himself a populist? Is his using of the political emptiness of populism to go into a room full of MAGA and appeal to them through populism, the language they know, to attempt to get them to watch his show with his newly transphobic co-host Anna? Those are all incredible questions. We don't have the answers to them, but you have to understand, Cenk, if you're watching this, which I don't think you are, although I could shout out to him in the thing or whatever. The reason people assume that you are in bad faith is because of how little resistance you are giving to the right and how little clarification you are using in your appeals to populism. You're not really promoting left-wing values when you're in this room, and you're letting fucking Charlie Kirk of all the fucking potato-headed fuckfaces dictate shit to you and say shit like housing isn't a constitutional right. Although arguably you would need housing to pursue any type of, although that would be in the Bill of Rights. Never mind, not important. I'm getting sidetracked. Cenk, at a time where our populist lingoed president has come into power and has immediately started to suddenly start talking imperialist shit, like taking Canada, Greenland, and the Panama Canal. By the way, everyone, the reason we sold the Panama Canal is because it was fucking ridiculously expensive for a foreign country to maintain the Panama Canal. That's why we sold it. It's because it was costing taxpayers in America tons of money, and we were like, you know what, fuck this. You take it, Panama. It's your problem now. And it made more sense for Panama to have it because, you know, Panama's fucking in Panama. But the point that Donald Trump is currently out here saying that he cannot rule out using military force to take Greenland or the Panama Canal is fucking unhinged. It's pro-war, it's pro-imperialism, and the shit he said about the Panama Canal sounds a lot like the shit that Putin said about Ukraine. Donald Trump has all the signs of a horrific fascistic leader. His narcissism, his borderline incoherent political philosophies, his constant struggles to gain more power for himself, the fact that he doesn't seem to understand the rules of what is even legal to do in his job, the fact that he's now currently talking about, have you ever noticed that Trump like, pals around with fascist dictators who are known like enemies of America. I hate to use that phrase, but like they kind of are. But then he comes home and he talks about invading and taking land from our literal allies. Like, what the fuck is even happening, people? So my entire point is that Cenk Uygur, get your shit together. TYT is kind of dead to me. You have become sad and pathetic. Now, I know what you're going to say, Cenk. I know what you're going to say. Is that you're trying to build bridges. You're trying to bring people together. You're trying to start those conversations. And I tell you what, Cenk, I think that's a good thing. Here's the thing. You fucking suck at it. There, I said it. You suck at it. You are bad at it. Because you're just showing up in these spaces to be like, oh, Democrats bad too, guys. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, no, I hate Democrats too. Let's go get them, guys. Hating the Democrats. High fives if you hate Democrats. I mean, I'm a Democrat, but you know what? We suck. You're bad at, if building bridges is truly what you want, you can't just build those bridges on, like, showing your ass. Like, that's not how you build a good bridge. That's a one-way bridge. You know who's good at what you're trying to do, that you should take some inspiration from? Luke Beasley. That's right. Shout out to Luke Beasley, another person that I'm certain is not going to watch this video. I mean, he could, I guess. Oh my God, that would be fucking amazing. But the point is that Cenk, who's probably not listening to me, because I'm nobody, Luke Beasley is someone who is also trying to build those conversations. But he doesn't fucking roll over and offer to lick the other side's balls. He's not out here opening up his mouth and saying, yes, right-wing media, take a shit in my mouth so that I can tell you how good it fucking tastes. That's what you're doing, Cenk. I saw your fucking interview with Charlie Kirk. It's sad. It's bad. You didn't do anything good for the left. You're not doing anything for the left. This doesn't feel like you're doing it in a way that will benefit us. Do you really think that this is going to work if the whole time you just continue to roll over and take it? No. Cenk, I encourage you to watch Luke Beasley's work and get back to me with a full report card. I mean, I don't know if you're going to get a passing grade in life. I don't know what any of that meant. So, to summarize, I implore you, I beg you, the viewer, actually figure out what you believe in. If you don't have real political beliefs, you can easily be taken advantage of by people who come to you saying things like populism. Because the populists know that you know that life sucks. And they know that they can appeal to you that way. And if you don't have political beliefs already in place, it can be very easy for them to brainwash you into believing what other political beliefs they have. So I want you to think about that. Think about that really hard. Populism is an empty belief system. The understanding that we should have a healthy skepticism towards authority is not a full belief. You can't base your entire political identity off of that. And Cenk, I hope you come to your senses and realize that working with MAGA is a mistake. Side note, if anyone out there is MAGA and would like to come on my show and talk to me, I'd love to have a cordial conversation with you. That thumbs up made that seem the thumbs up and freeze frame that I just made there made that seem a little disingenuous, but I am serious. I would love to have a conversation with you. I would actually like to understand how MAGA people think, even if that gives me an aneurysm. Final point, accelerationism, the dumbest thing you could possibly say. That's not fair. There's actually a lot. I'm using an oversimplified version of accelerationism. I would have to do more research on just how dumb accelerationism is. But the way I hear people using accelerationism today is what I'm talking about. Well, I hope you got the point. In fact, I hope you got the point before I even said the point. Please like and subscribe, ring that bell, leave some comments, all that jazz. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful whatever, wherever, whoever you are.